What happens when going home feels less like a return and more like a burial? Today, I'm joined by Erin Louis to discuss her latest book, There's No Grave Like Home. Erin is an author, essayist, secular advocate, and former exotic dancer whose work moves through memoir, satire, horror, dark humor, and brutally honest reflections on belief, grief, and identity. In this conversation, we talk about her shift into a more grounded, reality-based thriller and how small-time hostility, buried family secrets, and human monsters shape the story. This is the Dark Mind Podcast. If you enjoy the show, you can support it for free by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the dark conversation alive. So without further ado, I give you Erin Louis. Erin, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 11th day of April 2026 to discuss your latest work, There's No Grave Like Home. So, to give a brief synopsis of the book, it's about a woman named Georgia, a former exotic dancer in her mid-40s who is pulled back to the rural hometown she fled decades ago after inheriting her estranged father's house. What should be a fresh start quickly turns sinister when she discovers a secret buried within the home's walls, one that reframes her entire childhood and calls into question everything she believes she knew about the man who raised her. And that is where the story takes off. So the title inverts the comfort of the old phrase, "there's no place like home," into something that implies burial and entrapment. Was that subversion baked into the concept from day one, or did it arrive once Georgia's story took form?
I would say the title didn't come about until after the book was written, but I do think it was kind of baked in.
Well, the house holds a secret about her dead father that reframes her entire childhood, as I spoke about in the synopsis. What was your strategy for writing the moment of revelation so that it lands as an emotional gut punch rather than just a plot twist?
I guess I was just trying to, I don't know. There's a lot of, at the risk of saying too much, when I'm writing, there's a lot of my own experiences and my own thoughts and feelings that go into what I'm writing, because otherwise I don't really know how to make it authentic. And I did grow up in a small town. My father was around, but not like really. So there was just kind of a lot of my own feelings that were kind of baked into that. And so I'm not sure that I even intended for it to land as a gut punch so much as the story was kind of telling me how to write it, if that makes no sense at all.
And I think we've talked about it before. You are a pantser, or at least you were in some of your previous work, but this one took a more structured approach.
It did to an extent, and it's one of those things where, and actually I'm experiencing this right now with what I'm currently working on, where I really did want to create a framework and was kind of hoping that I would be able to be more of a plotter. But yeah, it sort of ends up being not what I planned. And I think that's just in the moment when I'm writing, it it kind of just tells me what to do. My own feelings, whatever I'm going through, wherever I'm sitting, whatever I'm looking at, kind of tends to influence like what I'm writing at the time. So yeah, I think the harder I try to actually kind of box myself in, like the more I fight against it. So this did have more structure than some of my other books for sure, but not nearly as much as I had intended. I may just never be a structured kind of person.
You like to color outside the lines?
It's almost like I can't help it. Yeah.
And do you notice, like a lot of writers that I interview, that, as far as the general arc of the story, maybe that can be planned? I don't know, but a lot of people tell me like their characters are like completely autonomous. Like they do what they want, and if they try to force them to do something that they don't want to do, the story starts kind of going to shit.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Is that as I'm writing the character, it's almost like my writing is informing itself. And so the characters it kind of takes shape, and as it does, yeah, if I try to make things happen that I'm not that doesn't fit with how the character is developing, then yeah, it definitely goes off the rail, or it feels forced. And that's the one thing in my writing that I don't ever want that to come through. I don't ever want my writing to feel like I have to. Because I think that's really going to show up in the storytelling or on the reader's end. Like I figure they might see that I'm kind of faking it, I guess.
Hmm. Well, horror about human antagonists requires a different kind of dread than supernatural horror because the threat is accountable and motivated. How did you write the neighbors as a threat without tipping them into cartoon villainy?
I think that was another thing. Unfortunately, they were definitely inspired by people that I did know when I grew up, in a small town. So I think that they didn't end up cartoonish, because they really were inspired by at least how certain people made me feel growing up in that environment, that kind of oppressive type thing. So, yeah, I think once again, a lot of my inspiration comes from my real experiences, and the vast majority of that comes from interactions with other people. So like when I was a kid, I was definitely bullied. I felt like an outcast. So it was easy to write villains that way.
Why were you bullied? Just out of curiosity. I mean, you've told me you're short, but that seems kind of like an odd thing to bully a
I
girl
know.
or
So I was
a girl
definitely
for.
bullied for being small, but I think that was just sort of like a target. If I'd have been too tall, I think I probably would have been bullied for that too. Um, when I moved up there, I was about 10, and I came from Southern California, and I came from very much a suburban type place. It wasn't anything like the tiny little town I moved up to. And so there was a lot of cultural differences that I don't think I adjusted very well to. So to at least own some of my own crap here, I don't think I was very nice to other kids. I don't think I made friends very easily. And when I felt awkward, I generally lashed out first. But as far as like things that I got picked on, it was definitely, my attitude. Freckles was a big thing. Being short, like I said, but I think it was more of, people kind of punching back or reacting to my bad attitude and because to be totally honest, I was very judgy of people when I moved up, to the hills, because it was such a different experience. There was a lot of cultural differences that I found off-putting, including, this would have been back in the late 80s, including some very flagrant and blatant, racism, that I also found just ignorant, I guess, and mean spirited. So I think that's kind of how I approached this new place, and then of course there was no malls. I'd never learned to ride a bike. So I only roller skated. You can't roller skate up in the country on the streets. There's no sidewalks. So there was just a lot of that. So I think it was a mix. Like I said, if I'm trying to own my own terrible attitude when I moved. So.
But then I suppose you had to deal with the small town sewing circle gossip. And a lot of times there's like a central church. And because of that, people kind of have this cult-like religious behavior, unlike just, your standard religious behavior, like cult-like to the point where you're cast out if you commit some unpardonable sin.
I think in this case, there were certain churches and there were things like that. But at that point, my mom was already deconstructing like Catholicism. So there were definitely a few like friends that I had that were actually my friends that we hung out with that went to church. And so I ended up going to church with them at least a couple times until I was asked to only stay on Friday nights so that I wouldn't have to go to church on Sundays with them. So there was a little bit of that. But I wouldn't say I was ever bullied because of religion, at least in this particular town. I have seen that obviously in my secular advocacy. I have seen a lot of exactly what you're talking about. I think in my case, that just wasn't a thing. And I was very fortunate that my mom was already really deconstructing a lot of her fundamentalist background. So I didn't feel a lot of pressure to fit in that way. It was more that I didn't fit in pretty much any other way. There were so many other ways to like not fit in that thankfully that wasn't one of them.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember. So it was your mom that you kind of piggybacked off of as far as your humanist beliefs?
Yeah, I would say that she definitely kind of reverted to that. Although my mom stayed at least, actually somebody just gave me the term hopeful agnostic. But definitely, I would say that like our values and everything really fell into humanistic beliefs. I think when I found humanism per se, as an actual like worldview or ideology, it was when I had let go of any type of spiritual belief. And I guess I was looking for like a framework, because one of the things that was always drilled into me is like, if you don't have religion, you don't believe in God, how come you're not out there murdering people and, stealing and stuff? And it was like, well, I don't need a God to have that. And so humanism, and specifically the humanistic principles, at least as they're laid out, was something that I found a moral framework to at least explain to other people, how I could be good without believing somebody was always watching me and going to torture me forever if I did something bad.
Gotcha. Yeah. What was that book called? The Moral Landscape?
Is that Sam Harris?
Yes, Sam Harris.
I believe it's Sam Harris. Yes. So that one has actually been on my to be read list for, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years.
That's probably when it was published.
Maybe there's a ton of great authors. I have a friend of mine, Phil Zuckerman he's a sociologist. He's written a couple of books on the subject. And then, a lot of like ex-pastors and ex-clergy, have written quite a few books like that. So that's kind of where I got that, but that is actually still on my list.
Yeah, there was I think he wrote a book. He used to be a Christian minister of music, like I guess led the praise and worship. He actually wrote some songs that after he kind of lost his faith, those songs are still being used and he's still receiving royalties from them. I forget what his name is.
There's a few now. The organization that I have a chapter for here in Northern California is called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the co-president, Dan Barker, was
that's him, right?
Pastor that way. Is that who you're thinking of?
Yeah, Dan. Didn't he write music as well?
I believe so. Yeah, he does like secular music and stuff. Actually, we just hosted him a couple of months ago.
I think that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
It could be. There's probably a few people. There's actually, I know there's an ex-clergy project. So there's actually a lot of ex-pastors and clergies. But Dan in particular is a very talented musician also. So like when he came, he played, like secular, religious songs kind of, which is kind of awesome because they're very tongue in cheek. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking about the same person. We likely are. His book, actually, Godless, is great as far as his story goes, to say, how he came from that place and how he got there. And it was absolutely humanistic principles that drove him away from that. So one of the reasons why I actually really like, if I may plug the nonprofit, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, is because that's at least his half of it is how he came, and his story really, really touched me a lot, because it came to the point where he was taught humanistic beliefs from his religion, but then found out that they weren't actually following that. So when he let the religion part go, he was actually, more free to follow the humanistic principles and actually like give a shit about other people. So it's kind of an amazing story.
Yeah.
And he's just such a sweet guy. So.
Awesome. Well, circling back to the book, horror has seen a big resurgence of rural Gothic and folk horror in the last decade. And I know you weren't like aspiring to any particular genre, but the book has elements of, in my opinion, those particular genres as well as others. So how do you see this book sitting inside that tradition, and where do you think it actively pushes back, if you had to consider those two genres and how your book might fit into them?
Again, with the like boxing in thing, definitely when I start to write something, I generally don't do it with a genre in mind, or I might, and then at some point I will completely go off the rails. But I do think with the rule setting, definitely that sense of like community in a bad way that was kind of like ganging up against her fits in there. And then I think where the pushback really happened is the supernatural elements. I don't think quite develop as the way that people might expect. Because I am a skeptic. And so I did kind of like, kind of using those, but maybe not following through in a way that people would expect for a story like this, that might involve, suspected hauntings or things like that. So I think my pushback is really probably comes from the skeptic in me. So.
Gotcha.
I watched a lot of Scooby-Doo when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, that really, I love Scooby-Doo as well. Would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
There you go.
Well, investigating a mystery and surviving a threat are two things that require opposite instincts. One is methodical, the other is reactive. How did you manage Georgia's dual role as detective and potential victim without letting either mode undercut the other?
Again, I would say that probably falls back on a lot of personal experience as far as being a performer, as an exotic dancer, where you do have to, maybe you're not solving mysteries, at least not the kind in horror novels, but, you do have to be reactive in a way where you're still somewhat in control, so that obviously you're either not ruining your money or getting in trouble or certain things like that. So I think that mindset kind of goes along with solving a mystery or being in a situation where the unexpected is coming after you, where you also have to be protective of yourself. So one of the things that I always tout when I do write about dancing, at least in my nonfiction, is, I always stress the importance of being sober, because it can be, it's an environment where there can be a lot of alcohol and or other chemical enhancements. But if you are there to complete your, not ideal. I think if you need, I think there's probably other professions that also, make people wish they were high when they were doing it, pretty much any other job in my case. So I think really just, having your ass about you in an environment that can be, it needs your reaction, but you also have the potential to be a victim. And so I think in that respect, I think Georgia's mindset, or, influenced, or inspired by my own, came from that environment. So I think she was probably well set up to deal with a situation, like she is in the book.
Well, there is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being in your mid-40s and realizing you have to start completely over, which I can kind of relate myself. How did you use that deep bone-level fatigue to make the town's hostility feel even more suffocating for her?
I think that comes a lot down to the way somebody in Georgia's situation, again, perhaps maybe could be, tapping into a lot of my own feelings, where you're almost more worried about how other people perceive you as opposed to how you're perceiving everybody else. And so when you've spent, however many years in a profession where the way you look, the way you appear to people is really of utmost important, right? It's kind of the whole thing. You're conforming to this ideal, this fantasy. And when that starts to fade, the only thing that you can think of is people are looking at me and they're seeing me like deteriorate in real time. So I think there's a lot of, in the way that Georgia is receiving people when she comes back to the town, I think there's a lot of her own insecurity and her own feeling like, she has to let that go. So it may be that people are viewing her in a way that, is more harshly than they really are intending to, because she's, so busy judging herself. She feels like everybody else is looking at her with that same critical eye. And a lot of that stems back to just that conformity to a certain ideal that, you just literally can't hold on to. At some point it's going to fade, or you're going to start to look really weird.
I think, are you and I the same, or at least close to the same age? I'm 40, about to be 46. I think you're younger than me, right?
No, but thank you for that.
Oh,
my Botox is fresh.
So is mine. No.
I'm 47. I turned 48 in October.
Okay, so just a few years older. Do you kind of feel like it's hard to relax? Like you feel any free moment you need to be working on something?
Yeah. I mean, to be quite frank, I feel like I'm running out of time.
Yeah, like like how a timer has hours, minutes, and seconds, and all of a sudden it's like the hours have disappeared. Now it's just minutes clicking down.
Yeah, I saw some horrible thing. I don't know if it was a meme or what it was. I know that I had to like resist throwing my phone across the room, but it said that, what did it say? It said something like 36 is middle age. And then it's like, and it was like, if you're in your late 40s, you're no longer, you're not middle age. And I just wanted to be like, oh, wow. Like I hate the entire internet and the world right now. So
well, as much
as middle age.
Yeah. I mean, with the medicinal enhancements, I still think 45 that's when you begin middle age. Anyway, and from what I hear, your 50s are actually pretty good. That's just what I hear from people in their 50s, which, I mean, I know they have a stake in saying that it's nice being where I am, but I don't feel like that's something you would lie about. I feel like if you felt like shit, you'd be like, oh yeah, fuck this.
There's a book called The Happiness Curve, that I read recently that actually states exactly that. There's a theory behind that. But I don't know. I suspect you just kind of start to run out of fucks. And as the fucks start dwindling, I think maybe that leaves more room to kind of appreciate like what you've accomplished as opposed to like constantly feeling like you're on the hamster wheel. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling like I'm still on the hamster wheel, except like with ibuprofen and Tylenol every day. So.
Yeah, apparently for men lose all modesty of their bodies, I think, in their 50s, which I would say is true because I go to the gym and it's terrifying. Like how people would just walk up and have a conversation with you. Like, what are you working on today? Why is your dick in my face? I
tell you what, I recently got a membership to a clothing optional resort in Cancun. And while it's strictly anecdotal, there are many, many, many data points to support your claim.
There. Yeah. Okay.
As far as the it's a lesson in biology.
Yeah. Well, as much as I don't particularly care for like sanctimonious not maybe sanctimonious, more like saccharine, real dramatic memes that people post online. I do kind of like this one. You can be lost at 22, broke at 28, unsure at 31, start over at 35, glow and rise at 38, find your purpose at 42, and become truly unstoppable at 47. I'm going with that.
Well, then apparently I am currently unstoppable.
Yeah,
I have about 6 months before I become stoppable again.
Fucking unstoppable. So, anyway. Just thought I'd throw that out there. So, circling back to the book, satire allows you to mock the monsters, whereas a grounded thriller requires you to take them seriously. Did writing antagonists who don't have a comedic release valve make them more difficult to live with while you're drafting? And for those listening that haven't read your books, just to give context, your previous 3 books were very satirical and had some dark humor in them.
I don't know. I guess they kind of played the straight man for me in this book. So it allowed some other releases with my other characters. They weren't quite the joke, but I think I don't know that I'm capable of writing without throwing something humorous in, if only because sometimes it's almost like my own release valve. When I start to freak myself out, I have to kind of put something else in there. Yeah. It's like, oh, hey, you're not a psychopath. That's cool.
Well, let's see here. So without spoiling the ending, what is the core emotion you want the reader to feel for Georgia when they close the book?
Probably fulfillment. She ends up kind of going full circle and coming to a place where she can be more comfortable in her own skin. I guess I really want people to understand where she's coming from by the time they get to the end of the book. I really want her particular character arc to really have a clear ending, have a clear goal and endpoint in mind.
Because I'm trying to remember. It's an unreliable narrator, right? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
So
I would say that.
So you're kind of given riddles, pieces of truth. So yeah, as you go through the book, it all kind of comes together. So you're hoping that people will key in on that and be able to separate the fact from the fiction, as far as even the backstory about her that's not given, to be able to kind of deduce where she's coming from, why she reacts the way she does, and be able to deal with the morally gray aspects of her a lot easier than in the beginning.
Yeah, I would say that's what I was kind of trying to accomplish there is, yeah, really, and it was cathartic for me to write from that perspective and to kind of give an insider's look as to what is going on in her brain and how she's feeling about where she's at and all these things happening to her in the context of her former job and having to start over. And, she was hoping this was going to be this like brand new start. It was going to be, it was going to be cool. And then she gets up there and then there's all sorts of stuff that happens. So.
Well, you've said that you write when ideas become overwhelming rather than on a schedule. Does a longer, more structurally demanding book like this one require you to impose some order on that instinct, or did it still come out in bursts?
It definitely still came out at bursts. I would say like the main plot points, those were kind of things that like came out and it was like, I need to get to my office, shut the door, turn my wave machine on and tell everybody to fuck off and get it out. And then there was the other stuff, where you're kind of building the framework of and building up to things happening. And sometimes I'm writing those parts where I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen yet. So that's the part where I had to be a little more disciplined, where I had to sit down and be like, okay, something else is going to happen. How are we going to get there? And those are the parts where I did have to kind of crack the whip a little bit on myself and be like, I know we can't wait to write this next part, but, we can't just get it all out at once. So the longer part of the book, I think, does allow though for more buildup.
Gotcha. And small little sidetrack here. I hear people talk about they got to listen to music. You know, they have a Spotify playlist for writing. Some people need absolute silence. Tell me about the wave machine.
Oh, I just have yeah, it's just kind of a noise machine that I don't know. There's something about waves. I've always been a water baby. I grew up near the ocean. It's like why I bought a membership in Cancun, really. Yeah, there's something about this sound of the ocean that actually just makes me kind of concentrate. When I'm doing like admin work for my for real job, by the way, I hate my job, so buy some books. Then I listen to music, and it's usually like heavy metal, like thrash music. I'm like, I need something that like fuels the ball of rage, that I feel when I'm doing my regular job. But when it comes to writing, no, I really I want to be like all up in my head, and I want to be in my story. And, for whatever reason, waves do that for me. I've just always found the ocean very comforting, a very peaceful place, and a place where I can really feel very grounded.
Yeah, noise helps me, but my ADD is so bad that even like I think waves would mess me up because there's variation to it. I need something steady that does not change. So what I usually listen to is, there's white noise and there's brown noise. For some reason, I prefer the brown noise, which is at the lower end of the spectrum. Kind of reminds me of the way a plane sounds, like if you're on a flight, just that low.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, that really works for me, whether it's reading, working on some project or something like that. It is so bad. I don't think I could take the variation of a wave, like ebbing and flowing.
Yeah, like I said, man, there's something about the ocean that's always found very grounding for me. But I mean, my machine does have like the white noise too. The brown noise I've only heard about on South Park. But I'm guessing that's a different thing.
No, it's not that kind.
I feel like that would be very distracting.
My seat is clean. I promise you.
I'm so sorry. But then there's mine has like a rain thing too, which I do like the rain, but also that whole getting older thing. If I'm sitting at my desk listening to water, that's also probably going to be problematic for me. So
then it becomes yellow noise.
Yeah, exactly. No, I like the waves. So,
gotcha. Well, you produce audiobooks for your own work, and you consume books via audio as well. Does hearing prose read aloud change how you think about your own sentence rhythm when you go back to the page?
I would say it does to some extent. I tend to listen to nonfiction because I do it a lot at the gym. So I figure, or like when I'm doing other tasks. So when I'm listening to a book, I'm generally physically busy. I recently listened to a book on serial killers in the Pacific Northwest. And it was specifically talking about the correlation between smelters and the toxins and stuff in the air. And the way that she started to describe a lot of the scenes and the settings was very fictionalized. And so while I loved the way that she was describing it, I was afraid because I was hoping to get the evidence of the correlation and all that stuff. I was a little worried about it. But my takeaway from the book was I really enjoyed the way that she structured her sentences. So there is an element of me, listening and hearing the way that those sentences are structured, as far as grow as a writer myself.
Well, you've published nonfiction that argues a case and fiction that tells a story. When you move between those two modes, does it feel like a gear shift in how your brain works, or is it all fundamentally the same act of persuasion?
I think there's definitely a different mode that I'm in when I'm writing nonfiction. I probably won't write any more nonfiction books, but I do still write articles occasionally. And yeah, with nonfiction, you already know what you're writing, so it's not as creative as fiction. I'm not trying to figure out what I'm going to write. I kind of already know what I'm going to write. So I would say it's a different mode. Although because I think I do tend to have a specific narrative style. I try to be very blunt and honest. And so I do try to incorporate that narrative style into my fiction because I do kind of want it to read. I mean, with fiction, you're basically trying to get somebody to believe a lie. So I do want to try to incorporate my nonfiction voice into my fiction voice so that it does give that element of illusion.
Gotcha. Well, you recently transitioned to working with Winding Road Stories, a publisher with an eye toward film adaptation. Has knowing that a book might be adapted changed how you visually structure your scenes?
Again, I don't like rules. So,
even if it's going to be a movie?
I know, I mean, that is the dream, right? Like, how cool would that be to, be watching something and like see, written by, that would be like the ultimate, thing for me. But when I'm telling a story, I just want to tell the story. And however that ends up, where it ends up, a lot of it just doesn't play into how I develop the story. I've been writing for 10 years now. I learned pretty early on that I wasn't going to be like Stephen King right out the gate, or if ever. And so I think I really let go of the idea of trying to make money, trying to sell something. And I just kind of decided, I'm going to write what I want to write. And I really hope that I have readers that enjoy it. And I hope that I have readers that, have as much fun as I did when I'm actually telling the story. And if that turns into something that, is a more commercial type product, that would be lovely. Because again, I really dislike my job. But I've always loved reading. I've always loved the way that story kind of shows up into your head, and I realize that when somebody's reading something, what they're picturing in their head is going to be pretty subjective and individualistic. It's not going to be what I'm picturing. So that's really what I enjoy about writing is thinking about how the reader's going to see that and picture that, and how they're going to take this journey that I've laid out, and how that's going to appear in their own, head as they're going along with the story. So everything else kind of ends up being secondary. But yeah, if there's anyone out there looking for a new screenplay, I'm definitely open to the idea.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know. Are you at liberty to say what your job is? Because the disdain of which you speak of it, I'm curious. It's like you shovel cow dung for a living or something.
It is. It pretty much is, figuratively speaking. It's exactly what I deal with. A lot of bullshit. No, I'm an office manager for a construction contractor, basically. So, and I run everything. It's a very small little thing. So I'm HR, I'm AP, I'm AR, and then I also handle the personal side of that. So like light bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. But I have, like, just to be really frank, I have dealt with more misogyny and sexism and being treated like I'm a complete moron as a construction admin than I ever did as a stripper. And the irony that really fuels my rage is the fact that because my brain works when I'm doing bookkeeping or I'm doing admin things, and I'm handling emails and paperwork and, all the minutia of like payroll taxes and all this stuff, is that a lot of construction guys are not necessarily minded that way. And so because we have very different ways of thinking and doing things, a lot of times I get treated like I'm the one that's not very bright, and I actually view them that way. So hence the thrash metal, and it scares my boss, so it keeps him out of the office. So the devil music really does me well.
Yeah, they might think you're going to throw a hex on them or something.
I mean, I could drain the bank accounts and be in Tahiti in, about 20 minutes.
All
so
right.
I always have leverage.
Well, you spent over 2 decades as an exotic dancer, which is an industry built on playing roles and creating fantasies. How much of your development as a storyteller do you credit to your time working the floor?
All of it. Honestly, I would say pretty much all of it, if not like 90%. Um, it was kind of like an informal sociological study, I would say. So I did a lot of research. I learned a lot about people, how they interact, certainly in a hypersexualized environment, but also from an emotional type standpoint. I was dancing during 9/11. So I got to see, a lot of military guys, getting ready to go and then coming home. A lot of paramedics, a lot of people that, worked, after all that stuff happened. So there was a lot of the interactions I had with people like that wasn't even necessarily in a sexual realm. A lot of it was very emotional, but also dealt around a lot of like toxic type masculinity, not on their part, but from society as far as expressing those kinds of emotions and things that they had when they came home. So that really helped fuel a lot of the inspiration I have for my books. Just that entire, it's almost like a little microcosm of the rest of society and the world and the way that people interact with each other, but in an anonymous way. Because when I'm there and I'm dealing with people, they don't even know that they know my real name. I'm somebody who's a very safe place to kind of unload on. And then you have the entire dynamics with, competing with other people who are also feeling the same pressure to conform to a certain aesthetic ideal. That also creates a certain dynamic that can be, you can have a club full of frenemies. Everybody's surfacely cool to each other, but we're also all competing for the same dollar, which also I felt a little bit in the writer's realm. Where everybody's like, oh, they can't wait to, yeah. So that's fun. But yeah, I would say it really, fuels all of my writing, just being able to express what I learned, and put that into fictional stories so that I'm able to actually humanize that profession while expressing a lot of my feelings, and a lot of the things I learned really just about people in that whole industry.
Well, you've written essays for the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which you mentioned earlier, essays about grief without heaven and morality without God. How does losing someone you love feel different when you genuinely believe death is final?
I think because I did grow up with the idea of an afterlife, there was definitely a point where I needed to come up with different coping mechanisms. And in particular, I'd be talking about my mom because that's the closest person I have lost. And I still feel that loss today. She passed away in 2013. I really had to find a different coping mechanism from pretty much everybody else around me. My whole family was talking about her in heaven and things like that. And for me, I needed to find a way to remember and feel like she was still with me without that idea, of a soul or an afterlife. And to be quite honest, I think writing really helped me do that. I was writing my first book, when she passed. I took a huge break right when she did, because I literally couldn't function for quite a while. And, writing felt like a way to honor her, and it felt like a way to preserve her memory. There's obviously a lot of my mom and me. There's a lot of my mom in my writing. But because she was my biggest cheerleader, pretty much in everything I did, one of my coping mechanisms and my replacement for, heaven was writing, was, being able to leave a piece of me after I'm gone, and by proxy, a piece of my mom. My mom was a musician, so she left music, so she's still here. For me, she lives on in me. She lives on in her music. She lives on in, my writing, and hopefully, what my kid does, he's going to take elements of her into, whatever he does, probably comedy, because he's hilarious. Can't imagine where he gets it from.
Well, Penn Jillette has publicly endorsed multiple books of yours. When someone whose writing shaped your worldview tells you that your work matters, does that feel validating or does it add pressure to live up to something? And I don't know if I've ever asked you this before, but have you ever met him in person?
I have met him in person. Yeah. After, well, I had to bug him a lot. Once I got his email address to read my first book, and through my annoying him, we did become, acquaintances. So I did have the opportunity to meet him. Penn's writing style was something that really spoke to me. Just because he really, really gives no fucks. And I admired that a lot. And, so yes, it was very, very validating that he actually, once I got him to read my book, and then he ended up reading, another book of mine, unsolicited, which was even more flattering. I wouldn't say it adds to the pressure because, like I said before, I kind of gave up trying to be what other people wanted me to be in terms of my writing. Because like I said, it wasn't like, when I first published my very first book, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to hit publish on Amazon and I'm going to be a famous writer, and all this stuff. And so it was like, as that whole like illusion faded, maybe delusion is a better word, faded, I just kind of decided I was going to write what I want. And so, yes, it's definitely validating to have somebody I admire. And I've been fortunate to have other authors, like my books and read my books too. So that's definitely flattering, if nothing else. But yeah, when it comes down to it, man, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So I guess I just took the pressure off myself.
Which other book did he read unsolicited?
Stripper Noir, about the
okay.
serial killer stripper.
You and is that Armand Rosamilia?
Yes. Yeah. I wrote that. Armin was very, very gracious to write that to me because write that with me. I actually asked him specifically. I said, I really want to try writing fiction. How about we do something together? And that was fun because we did it was almost like a writing exercise, like from English class where one person writes a chapter and the next person writes a chapter. So we got to riff off each other. But Armin has been next to my mom, a really big cheerleader of mine, since I started writing. He found me randomly on the internet, like I expected, millions of people to do, which did not happen. But Armin found me, kind of took me under his wing, gave me a lot of great advice, did my first ever podcast. And, he was gracious enough to hold my hand while we were writing Stripper Noir. So, and it's still one of my favorite books. It was fun to write.
Well, you write very candidly about your life, as well as your past and your beliefs. Have you ever written something in a memoir or an essay that you later felt was too revealing, or do you find that transparency empowering?
I would imagine maybe other people reading some of that stuff is feeling like it's too revealing. Yeah, I think I just really strive to be authentic. And I think a lot of that comes from performing as I did, where I didn't want to lose myself as a performer and I really wanted to keep as many elements of myself as possible. And so I think when I started writing, I really just wanted to be as real as possible. And I also wanted to, because I wanted to humanize and destigmatize and kind of give people a fresh view of what I did. I kind of felt like it demanded honesty, even if I've written things that are embarrassing, which I know I have. But as far as too revealing, I guess I just fall back on, Popeye's sage old advice, I am what I am. And, that's what I'm going to write.
Well, let's see. In your reviews, you are judged by the faithful and prudes alike. And seems like you probably navigate projections daily. How do you discern useful feedback from projections of others' insecurities?
I don't know, probably whether I'm flattered or not. I don't know. I don't feel like I think that when I write about things, beliefs that, what are sometimes referred to as sacred cows. They're untouchable beliefs from people. Because I was a believer myself at one time, I do believe I try to hold a little bit of grace when I get criticism, writing about secular issues or atheism or, secular humanism, whatever, term you like better. I try to hold a little bit of understanding from people coming from that perspective. And when you're attacking somebody's, or you're dismantling or challenging somebody's, sacred cows, you're kind of poking holes in their worldview and things that they find comfort in, and a lot of times coping mechanisms. So I don't take a lot of that personally, but I don't necessarily take it critically as something I'm going to change with what I'm doing. I think it's important for people to challenge their beliefs. But sometimes it feels ooky. So I'm going to get some pushback on that, and, that's okay.
Well, looking at everything you've written, the memoirs, the horror, the advocacy, the essays, what do you think the full body of work says about you that no single book could say alone?
That I don't have much of a filter. Going back to that too revealing thing, I hope that it projects a sense of authenticity and a sense of honesty. It's really what I strive to be, even when I'm wrong. I hope that it comes across as authentic, whether people agree with me or not. I hope that I never come across as fake or, even really trying to write for an audience. Like I said, I kind of write what I write, and I really do hope that it connects and lands with some people. So I would say what I'm really hoping my body of work says is, that I'm honest, if nothing else.
Well, what part of your worldview has changed the most since you started publishing, and what has stayed stubbornly the same?
I'm still a stubborn skeptic. I do look for objective truth, if that is even an achievable goal. When I first started writing about secular issues, particularly atheism, I think that I was coming from a place of feeling duped. I felt like I had been kind of, I don't want to say lied to, because I was taught certain things from people that believed what they believed. So I'm not sure that it was a lie per se. But I will say I was coming from an angry place when I first started writing about secular issues. So what has changed about my worldview is I am more accepting about beliefs of people that believe things that I used to. Like I said, I try to approach people with different worldviews to an extent. I definitely have some boundaries and limits there. But I do try to be understanding of people that aren't able to come to a place of the stubborn, hardcore skeptic that I am now. So I would say that's how it's changed. The more people you talk to, the more understanding you have of where other people are coming from. I've softened my own stance on a few issues there.
Well, have there been any life-changing events since we last spoke?
My son turned 21, which is a trip.
He hasn't gone off the rails, has he?
I mean, I don't know. I guess that depends on what you mean by that. Yeah, no, he was cool. Even actually, we went out for his first drink, had some friends. And so it was, it was odd looking over in the bar and seeing my child. And maybe that's actually why he didn't go off the rails. Mom's the buzzkill in the bar, apparently. But, no, I'm actually pretty proud of him. So.
Cool. Yeah, no, not off the rails like he's screwing up or anything, but is he like, have a beer with the boys, or is he just slamming shots and like...
No, and that may just be a mom thing. It may be that he's just not doing that in front of mom.
Wait till mom leaves.
Me, my 21st birthday in the bar, I think I threw up after the first 20 minutes. So, hey, he's ahead of me in that respect. So when he does drink, he gets really sweet and lovey. So another win for mom.
My 21st birthday, we went to a bar called Cecil's, and within the first half hour, a girl that I went to high school with just happened to be there with her husband and her husband's friend, and her husband's friend got into a fight with the bouncer and got thrown out on his head. And then I don't know how much longer it lasted, but after that, I just don't remember anything. So, yeah, I don't drink anymore. Anyway, Erin, as always, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug, reiterate, or let your readers know about?
Just my book coming out on May 5th. There's No Grave Like Home. I have several other books. Also, previously I was with Hellbound Publishing. We're putting out the third book to the South of Heaven series, so that should come out later. And then I have the privilege of attending StokerCon this year in June. It's my first time. I will be in Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. Sounds like a wonderful place. Yeah, so I think that's it. If anybody would like to read more about my books and articles and more about me, erinlouis.com pretty much has everything there.
All right. Sounds good. Well, listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Erin, thank you again for joining me. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.